you want the mind of Christ? Learn to appreciate people. Learn to appreciate. Don't just criticize. Your children. Ask yourself, all of you who got little children, ask yourself how much you have corrected them, and ask yourself how much you have appreciated them. When was the last time you told one of your children, that was great the way you helped that person. That was great the way you did that. That was so much like the Spirit of Jesus. I'm so proud of you, my son, my girl. Do you ever say that? Or you say, why did you do that? How many times have I told you not to do that? Yeah, we need to correct them. But appreciation can do wonders. And Jesus did it to unbelievers. Think of Nathanael. It says in John chapter 1, then when Philip, he met Jesus and found the Messiah, and he told Nathanael, that's a beautiful passage. I like that. You must see it to believe it. John chapter 1. I don't have time to turn to these references. That's why I don't always turn to it. But if you listen to this video sometime, please look up the references. John chapter 1. Philip was one of the people who found Jesus. It says in verse 44. Philip, verse 45. John 1:45. Found Nathanael and said to him, we have found the Messiah, the one whom Moses and the prophets and all spoke about, and that is Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph the carpenter. And Nathanael said to him, oh, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? You know how certain areas, even in the United States, have a reputation for crime? Certain ghettos. You hear that somebody came out of that ghetto and you say, he came from there, is it? How can anybody come from there? I mean, you all may be knowing of certain places in this country. And Nathanael said, Nazareth? That's got such a bad reputation. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And those were the last words he spoke. And the next thing he sees Jesus. And Jesus heard that. How do you know he heard that? Because later on he says, Nathanael, I even saw you under the fig tree a few hours ago praying. Jesus knew a lot more about Nathanael than he realized. And as soon as Nathanael comes, what's the first thing that he says about Nathanael? There's a perfect man or a man who's saved or any such thing. There is an Israelite in whom there's no hypocrisy. He believes Nazareth is useless and he says so. There's absolutely no hypocrisy in him. He's not, saying nice words. I read those words, Here is a man in whom there is zero hypocrisy. I say, Lord, if you ever said that about me, I'd frame it up and put it in my house. Here is a man in whom there is no hypocrisy. He's not perfect. He's got a lot of mistakes in his life. But he's not a hypocrite. Can you imagine what it did to Nathanael? He'd never have forgotten it for the rest of his life. That when I was unconverted, Jesus said about me, there's no hypocrisy in me. Can Jesus say that about you? You don't have to be holy for that. Nathanael was not holy. He was not even converted. He hadn't even become a disciple. Can a prostitute be free from hypocrisy? Sure. What does it mean to be a hypocrite? A hypocrite means an actor. If a prostitute says, I'm just a prostitute. I earn my living by prostitution. There's no hypocrisy in that person. He's absolutely honest. The word hypocrite is a Greek word. It's not an English word. Unfortunately, I feel sorry about these words that have not been translated. Baptism is not an English word at all. It's a Greek word, baptizo, which means immerse. That's the plain meaning. If they had translated it, go and immerse people in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, there'd never have been any child baptism in 2,000 years. But they didn't translate it. Hypocrite. The Greek word hypocrite means actor. If you had gone to Greece 2,000 years ago and said, where are all the hypocrites? They say, go to the theater. There are plenty of them there. Today, if you ask where are the hypocrites, they say, go to the churches. You'll find them all there. It's very different. But people don't understand what hypocrites are. Hypocrites are people who are pretending. That means they come to the church and say, all to Jesus I surrender. And they haven't done it. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. They think they mean it? This is hypocrisy, to sing these wonderful songs and you don't mean it in your life. There's a man without hypocrisy. Covet that what I was trying to say is there was this spirit of appreciation that Jesus had. He wasn't afraid that Nathanael's head would get puffed up or the Roman centurion's head would get puffed up. We are so miserly when it comes to appreciating people because we think, oh, he'll get puffed up. Jesus didn't have that fear. He believed in encouraging people, and that encouragement led people to be his disciples. So I believe we need to develop that habit. But coming back to this matter of being faithful in little things, Jesus was faithful when he went to that baptism to stand in line, didn't go according to his reason. There's something more in that baptism. I remember about 2-3 years after I was converted, I took baptism. I was baptized as a little baby, or they called it baptism. It was christening, because I grew up in an Orthodox church. My parents took me to the priest to sprinkle water on my head, to give me a name and all that. But then, years later, I was converted, and I realized that I must take baptism, and I got baptized. And then I went to a church where they studied the Bible just like you study a chemistry book or a history book, very accurately, but there was no power. And they were very anti-Pentecostal. They said all this business of the Holy Spirit is all heresy. And I found something missing in my life. I studied the scriptures, but I felt a power was missing. I don't know whether you ever felt like that. I found a power missing in my life, which I saw in the early apostles. I mean, there was a power in their life. I don't mean power to do miracles, that's a matter of ministry, but power to live the Christian life. And I found I was defeated, and I saw that John the Baptist said, he will baptize you in the Holy Spirit and fire. And I couldn't say that I'd experienced that. And I said, Lord, if somebody were to ask me, have you been baptized in the Holy Spirit and fire? John the Baptist said in Matthew 3:11, Jesus will baptize you, immerse you in the Holy Spirit and fire. John the Baptist told people, I can immerse you in water, Matthew 3:11, but I can't immerse you in fire. You got to go to Jesus. I can immerse you in water, and people come to me and say, Brother Zach, please lay your hands on me. I said, putting my empty hands on your head will give you nothing. I can immerse you in water. Go to Jesus. He can immerse you in fire. So I decided, I said, Lord, I've got to seek you for this baptism on fire. And I'm not against the Pentecostals. I think there's some very godly people in many Pentecostal churches, and I have some very good friends there, and there are many godly people there. But the particular church I went to, it was just a lot of noise. And I came away disappointed, and I said, Lord, I don't need that. And I came home and I said, Lord, can't you do it for me here in my room? Can't you fill me with the Holy Spirit? And I searched the scriptures, and I searched, and I said, Lord, what do I have to do? And I opened my life, and I said, Lord, you can have every area of my life. And the Lord pointed me to Jesus' baptism. And this is what the Father showed me, that when Jesus went to the waters of baptism, that's when he was anointed. He submitted to John the Baptist, putting him in the water. He didn't resist it. He submitted, and he was raised up, and the Spirit came upon him. And from that, God gave me a message. When Jesus was doing that, he was submitting to the way of death and burial. Well, that's what baptism symbolizes. He was saying, I am willing to let other people kill me, bury me. My Father will raise me up. That is the testimony in baptism. That's why it's so important. And that was a testimony of how he was going to live for the rest of his life, and how he had already lived for 30 years. I'm willing to let other people push me down, kill me spiritually, and bury me. My Father will raise me up. I have absolute faith in that. And the Lord spoke to me saying there's a close connection between the way of the cross and the real power of the Holy Spirit. And this is what God spoke to me. I was a very young Christian, 23 years old. And this is what God spoke to me. If you will choose the way of the cross all your life, you will have my power resting upon you. Always. But the day you decide to move away from that way, thinking you're graduated from it or something else, in that day my power will depart from you. This is the word the Lord spoke to me. I got it from Jesus' baptism, and I found the answer. And then as I looked around at so many people who claimed to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, and I didn't see the fire of God either in a life of holiness in their life or even in their ministry. There was no holiness in their life. There was no power in their ministry. And I saw that what was missing was the Holy Spirit's power was not linked up with the way of the cross. They had not chosen the way of the cross. And so they came to a stagnation. Maybe they were genuinely filled. I don't question that. But what the Lord began to show me from then was the fullness of the Spirit is not a once-for-all experience. It's very important, my dear brothers and sisters, that every one of you seek to be filled with the Holy Spirit. You must be filled with the Holy Spirit. This is not an optional extra. This is not a symbol like baptism or the Lord's table or veiling the head. Fullness of the Holy Spirit is something essential. If you don't have it, you've missed something in your life. And if you're going to live all through your life on earth without being baptized in the Holy Spirit and fire, I want to tell you, you missed something. And I did not want to miss that. Even though I was in an assembly which didn't teach that, which was anti-Pentecostal. So I found the truth of the baptism in the Holy Spirit, not from the church I was attending, which is a brethren assembly, but from the scriptures. I saw Jesus was baptized, and Jesus is anointed. I say, I'm baptized, and I want to be anointed. I'm not better than Jesus. If Jesus had lived a holy life for 30 years, and he still needed to be anointed with the Holy Spirit, where am I? What arrogance to think that I don't need what Jesus needed, even though he had lived a holy life for 30 years. No, I said, I need it. And I saw that because the baptism in the Holy Spirit, as it taught today, has been de-linked from the way of the cross, that's why the power is missing. And what the Lord began to show me is that when I'm baptized, when I'm born again, the capacity in my heart is like a little cup. You know, the psalmist says, I will lift up the cup of salvation. I think Psalm 118. So when God fills me, it's a cup or a glass. It's full. You can't fill it more than that. It's full. But if I walk the way of the cross from that day onwards, consistently, this cup will become like a bucket. My capacity will increase. Now, if I pour this water in the cup into a bucket, there's hardly any water in it. It needs to be filled again. I need to be filled with the Holy Spirit again. You read about Peter being filled with the Holy Spirit at least 3 times in the Acts of the Apostles, not just on the day of Pentecost. At least 3 distinct occasions where he was filled with the Holy Spirit. So I learned that the Holy Spirit filling is not a once-for-all thing. As your capacity increases, and your capacity will never increase if you don't walk the way of the cross. Your fullness of the Spirit, yeah, you'll be filled, but it'll be a cup all your life. But if you walk with the Lord in the way of the cross, that is, the way of self-denial, as I showed you, the way of the rent veil, where you say no to your own will, where self is dethroned and Christ is Lord, where you, through the Spirit, put to death the deeds of the body every day, like it says in Romans 8:13. The cup will become a bucket, and then I say, Lord, I need to be filled again. And I continue to walk the way of the cross, the bucket will become a tub. You pour a bucket of water into a tub, there's hardly anything there. You need to be filled again. And you walk the way of the cross, the tub will become a lake. Can you imagine that? And that's filled again. And you walk the way of the cross, the lake will become a river. Wow. And that gets filled again. And you continue to walk the way of the cross, and it becomes many rivers. Then is fulfilled that verse in John 7:37. He who believes in me, out of his innermost being will flow rivers of living water.